What if I told you that the world you live in, the prices you pay, the job you work, the debt your government carries, are all controlled by a machine you were never meant to see? A machine that doesn't rely on gears or metal, but on promises, interest, and the illusion of value. This machine is so old, so deeply embedded, that even presidents, billionaires, and entire nations bend to it. Every country on earth, rich or poor, now operates inside this hidden system. Some willingly, some with no choice, and some simply because the machine has grown too large to escape. Today, we're opening the door you were never supposed to open, exposing the hidden machinery behind global debt. Once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. First, challenge a belief most people take for granted. Countries run on money. They don't. They run on debt. The United States, Japan, China, India, Canada, Pakistan all owe more than they can ever repay. But the real mystery isn't how they got into debt. It's who the debt is owed to. You hear basic explanations. Governments borrow from investors. Countries lend to each other. Central banks print money. These answers are true but shallow. They hide the deeper mechanism that shapes nations behind the curtain. To understand how we got here, we must travel back. Not to 2008, or 1971, or even World War II. We have to return to the moment when money stopped being something physical and became something imagined. Centuries ago, money meant gold, land, real value, limited, finite. This limited war, corruption, and power. You couldn't invent gold overnight. If your kingdom had 100 gold coins, that was it. Then medieval bankers created something revolutionary. Credit money that didn't exist yet, but could exist later. Suddenly, value didn't have to be real, it just had to be believed. This was the first gear placed inside the hidden machine. By the 1600s, early central banks emerged. Amsterdam, England. Governments learned that controlling credit was more powerful than controlling armies. If you control lending, you control nations. So governments turned to banks that could create limitless credit with pen and paper, and debt became an extremely profitable business. Fast forward to 1913, the creation of the U.S. Federal Reserve, a semi-private institution authorized to issue currency as debt. Then, in 1944, the Bretton Woods Agreement made the U.S. dollar the world's financial anchor. Nations no longer borrowed in their own currencies. They borrowed in dollars, a system globally controlled and monitored. But the real turning point came in 1971, when President Nixon ended the gold standard. Money became pure belief. From that day forward, the machine became unstoppable. Governments could borrow endlessly. Central banks could print credit without limit. Crises were solved with more debt. Every solution strengthened the system. When money becomes infinite, debt becomes infinite. And when debt becomes infinite, someone ends up owning everything. By the 1980s, debt outgrew global GDP. By the 2000s, credit dwarfed real economic production. Japan crossed 250% of its GDP in debt. The US surpassed $34 trillion. Developing nations became tied to IMF and World Bank cycles. Private banks quietly acquired claims over national economies through bond markets. And yet, governments keep borrowing because stopping would collapse everything. Modern countries cannot survive on tax revenue alone. The machine feeds them, and they feed it in return. Debt, refinancing, interest payments, bond ratings, currency manipulation. These are control mechanisms. If a country's policies displease financial markets, liquidity disappears, currencies fall, and economies are punished without firing a single bullet. Governments try to escape, printing money, raising rates, lowering rates, austerity, stimulus, bailouts. But every fix requires more debt. Every reform strengthens the machine. The world isn't addicted to money. It's addicted to debt-funded stability. Stability bought with borrowed time, borrowed future, and borrowed currency. And the pattern repeats. The 2008 financial crisis solved with more debt. The 2020 pandemic solved with record money creation. The inflation crisis treated with rate hikes that force countries to borrow even more. The cycle never stops. Today, global debt exceeds $300 trillion. That's $38,000 for every human being. And most of it will never be repaid because repayment isn't required. Servicing interest is enough to keep the machine running. And the beneficiaries are the silent owners of the system. This is the hidden machinery. Debt creates money. Money creates dependence, dependence creates control, and control keeps the machine alive. Three truths reveal themselves. Global debt isn't an accident, it's the foundation. Central banks influence nations more than governments, and once inside this system, countries can never shrink their debt. The world is finite, but our debt system is infinite. This contradiction cannot last forever. The question isn't if the machine breaks. The real question is, what replaces it when it does?